stop scrolling, you were never rewarded for being good. You were trained to be harmless. They told you kindness builds loyalty. They lied, it builds dependency. They told you honesty earns respect. Another lie, it only hands your enemies ammunition. The truth is simple. Morality is a tool, wielded by those who understand control, and obeyed by those who never will. In this video, you'll learn how power truly operates, why virtue without strategy destroys the virtuous, and how to think like the few who rule the many. Subscribe, because from this moment on you stop being the subject and start becoming the strategist. They said goodness is light, but light can blind you. You spend your life trying to be kind, careful, pure, until you realize purity has no armor. People smile when you give, yet their hands never stop taking. The world keeps a quiet rule. The generous feed the hungry, and the hungry never stop. You tell yourself that patience will win in the end, that virtue earns reward. But the years teach you something colder. The world does not pay you back. It studies you, learns your softness, and shapes its claws around it. Every thank you is a receipt. Every I owe you is a story that never closes. You think you're building peace. They think you're building permission. And when the weight of other people's comfort finally crushes your breath, you realize the truth. You were never being good for goodness' sake. You were being good because you feared being anything else. Fear disguised as virtue. Submission wearing the mask of empathy. You believed that to stay gentle is to stay human, but humanity is a spectrum of light and shadow. Without the shadow there is no shape, no edge, no you. There's a moment, small and silent, when the heart breaks its own promise. You stop apologizing for your fire. You stop explaining why you are tired of pleasing ghosts. And in that stillness, something ancient wakes up. A part of you that remembers how to survive without approval. Goodness without boundaries is not love. It's self-erasure. And every time you erased yourself to keep the peace, you were teaching the world how to forget you. You start noticing the small betrayals first. The way people praise your kindness while quietly expecting it. The way they borrow your time as if it were air, free, endless, owed. It happens in families, friendships, offices, every room where people smile too quickly. They have learned the same lesson you were taught, that good hearts bend and so you bend. You lend, you help, you listen. You stay late, you apologize, you swallow words that taste like rust because peace feels easier than truth. At first it seems noble, then it becomes habit. And habit becomes identity, until one day you hear yourself saying, "It's fine," when it isn't. You hear the fatigue in your own voice and realize you've built an altar of calm to hide your resentment. You light candles to patience and call it virtue, but beneath the flame there's a slow, steady burn of anger that you never name. Goodness, when performed for others, is a contract signed in silence. The moment you stop delivering, the crowd shifts. The warmth that once surrounded you cools. The faces that once praised you harden. You see it in their eyes. You were not loved for who you were useful. It's a brutal clarity. You remember every time you said yes out of fear that no would make you unloved. You remember how being the reliable one chained you to exhaustion, and you finally see what they never wanted you to see. That your constant giving made them comfortable, not grateful. The human mind has a strange hunger for balance. When someone gives endlessly, others begin to believe they deserve it. It isn't malice. It's gravity. Kindness without limit distorts the field around it. Until taking feels natural and gratitude feels unnecessary. You stand in the mirror and study your reflection as if meeting a stranger. There's a question behind your eyes. When did I trade power for approval? The answer is written in every smile you forced, every boundary you erased to keep someone else from frowning. You realize goodness was never the problem. It was the fear that made you desperate to prove it. That's the turning point. The realization that a soft heart doesn't need to be a submissive one. You begin to practice the smallest rebellion, saying no without explanation. At first it feels like violence, then it feels like breathing. You learn that silence can protect you. That distance can be kindness in disguise. People notice the change. Some step back confused. Others test you, push harder hoping the old you will return. But the old you is tired of playing saint in other people's stories. The new you watches, calm, deliberate, understanding that respect is not requested, it is taught. And in that understanding there is a strange peace. Not the fragile peace that comes from pleasing everyone, but the quiet one that grows when you finally stop begging to be seen as good. You realize goodness is not what you do for others. It is the honesty you keep with yourself. To be good is to be whole, and wholeness sometimes requires disappointment. So you begin to rebuild. You gather the fragments of patience, love, and discipline, but you forge them into a different shape, one with edges. You can still care, still help, still give. But now, it is choice, not compulsion. You learn to serve with intention, not submission. And for the first time, your kindness carries weight instead of weakness. Strength doesn't arrive as thunder. It comes as clarity. You stop confusing stillness with surrender. You stop mistaking loudness for authority. Power, you learn, is not volume, it's direction. It's the choice to speak only when the words cut through fog. You move through the same rooms, but something in the air has changed. People sense it before you say a word. You no longer rush to fill silences. You let them stretch until truth shows its face. The ones who once depended on your endless yeses shift uneasily, realizing the script has changed. They search for the old rhythm of your obedience and find only quiet resolve. It isn't cruelty that steadies you. It's awareness. You begin to see how compassion without discernment turns to self-sacrifice. You start reading motives the way others read headlines. There's no malice in your observation, only precision. You understand that every human act carries both need and strategy. The world feels sharper, colors more defined. You notice how people advertise their fragility to avoid accountability. You see how apologies can be currency, how charm can be armor. It doesn't make you bitter, it makes you measured. The fog of guilt that once kept you compliant begins to thin, and as the fog clears, you meet the version of yourself that never begged to be harmless. This self is quiet, calculating, but not cold. It understands warmth as a tool, not a trap. It gives when giving amplifies value and withdraws when giving feeds entitlement. This is not the death of empathy. It's its evolution. You learn to look at situations the way a sculptor studies stone. Every kindness is a chisel stroke. Some reveal beauty, others weaken the structure. Your goal is not to stop carving. It's to carve with intent, because a life shaped entirely by pleasing hands leaves no signature of its own. You think back to the moments when you believed love and sacrifice were synonyms. Now you see that real love demands the strength to say enough. To love purely, you must guard the part of you that loves. Without that guard, affection becomes currency for anyone willing to spend your peace. People will call this change arrogance. They'll whisper that you've hardened, that you've lost your warmth. But you know the truth. You've stopped selling it cheaply. The ones who truly see you will understand that boundaries are not walls. They're doors that you decide when to open. And in this new space, silence becomes your ally. Where once you filled it with explanations, now you let it speak for you. Each pause declares, I choose when to engage. That declaration reshapes every interaction. It makes even your absence a statement. Power, you realize, doesn't need to announce itself. It simply refuses to chase. And that refusal, steady, calm, unarguable, is what separates the wise from the willing. There's a moment when everything clicks. The quiet realization that control isn't about domination. It's about direction. You stop reacting and start designing. Every word you speak, every silence you keep, every gesture you allow, it all becomes deliberate. You no longer move with emotion, you move with intention. People sense the shift before they understand it. The ones who used to test your patience start hesitating. They can't explain why, but something in your energy has changed. You've stopped being predictable, and that unsettles them. Predictability is comfort, and you've taken that away. Now they have to meet you on your terms. This is what Machiavelli understood better than anyone. Power isn't just in what you do, it's in what people believe you can do. The appearance of strength creates strength. The reputation of restraint breeds respect. You don't need to fight every battle. You just need people to think you could win any of them. So you become strategic with your presence. You appear when it serves a purpose. You disappear when it strengthens your mystique. You learn that sometimes silence makes more noise than shouting ever could. In this world of constant noise, mystery is magnetic. People lean toward what they can't predict. They chase what they can't fully understand. You start playing life like a game of chess. Every piece you move has meaning. Every delay is a tactic. Every no becomes a message. You're not trying to win every exchange. You're trying to control the rhythm. Power, after all, is rhythm. It's knowing when to advance, when to retreat, and when to let your opponent destroy themselves through impatience. And this strategy doesn't make you cruel, it makes you efficient. You start investing your energy where it multiplies instead of where it evaporates. You stop trying to save people who enjoy drowning. You stop explaining yourself to minds committed to misunderstanding you. You stop giving your fire to those who only want warmth, not light. There's a ruthless calm that comes with this awareness. You start seeing people not as good or bad, but as useful or draining, intentional or chaotic. That clarity doesn't make you heartless, it makes you focused. It allows you to conserve the most valuable currency you have, your energy. Because every manipulation, every demand, every emotional storm people bring your way has one goal: to drain that currency. Now you see the game. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. The friend who always needs advice but never takes it. The coworker who just needs a small favor that somehow becomes your job. The relative who uses guilt as a leash. You begin to notice these patterns everywhere. It's not evil, it's survival. People feed on what they can reach. Your only mistake was staying within reach for too long, but not anymore. Now, you decide who gets access. You control proximity. You make people earn your presence, not just expect it. And as soon as you start doing that, something incredible happens. Respect replaces assumption. The same people who once ignored your boundaries start treading carefully. The same voices that used to demand your time now ask for it politely. Because power, real power, is felt before it's seen. It's not an aggression. It's in the restraint to use aggression only when it matters. It's not in control over others. It's in mastery over yourself. That's the secret, Machiavelli, whispered through history. Control yourself and the world starts moving around you. You begin to understand why the powerful often appear calm. They're not emotionless, they're precise. Their anger has a purpose. Their kindness has conditions. Their silence has meaning. Every move is weighted. Every gesture measured. You don't need to be cruel to be feared. You just need to be clear. And clarity is terrifying to people who live on manipulation. They can't twist your words if you speak directly. They can't guilt you if you know your limits. They can't use your goodness if you've weaponized it with strategy. You've turned the game inside out and now they're playing by your rules. You've stepped out of the illusion that kindness equals safety. You've realized that survival requires precision. You're no longer playing defense. You're shaping outcomes. You're not waiting to be chosen. You're deciding who gets the privilege of standing beside you. And with that decision comes peace. The cold, commanding peace of someone who no longer explains their worth, no longer begs to be understood, no longer trades their soul for approval. The moment you stop explaining yourself is the moment the world starts listening. That's the paradox of power. It begins the second you withdraw your need to prove it. You've spent years believing that patience would be rewarded, that goodness would speak for itself. But the truth is, silence only works when people fear what might break it. You used to stay quiet to keep the peace. Now, you stay quiet to control it. People start to wonder what you're thinking. They study your face, your tone, your pauses. Every second you withhold a reaction becomes a weapon. In a world addicted to noise, composure is dominance. You're not chasing validation anymore. You're commanding attention through restraint. This is where the weak get filtered out. They can't stand the weight of their own uncertainty. They rush to fill the silence to prove they're still relevant. But you've learned that control doesn't shout, it observes, it calculates, it waits. Because power isn't in reaction, it's in precision. And every time you resist the urge to explain, you take something from them. Their leverage. You begin to see how the system feeds on your compliance. Society doesn't actually reward goodness. It rewards usefulness. When you were kind without limits, you were useful. When you were always available, you were predictable. When you started saying no, you became a problem. But the irony is, that's when your value multiplied. People respect what they can't access easily. Scarcity builds reputation. Boundaries build identity. You've stopped being the person who bends. You've become the one who defines the terms. And the ones who can't manipulate you will start to label you cold, arrogant, distant. Let them. These are the words powerless people use to describe self-control. They will never understand that detachment isn't cruelty. It's focus. You're not withdrawing because you hate the world. You're withdrawing because you finally love yourself enough to protect what's left. In the beginning, this transformation feels like isolation. You lose people. The ones who thrived on your endless generosity will vanish when the flow stops. But soon, you realize they weren't friends. They were collectors. Collectors of your time, your empathy, your forgiveness. They didn't love you. They loved what you gave them. Now that the transaction is over, so is their loyalty. And you're free. You start noticing something else. The people who remain are quieter, stronger, fewer. They don't need you to shrink so they can shine. They respect your silence because they understand its purpose. These are the ones who move with discipline, who value the weight of their words, who don't waste energy proving what they already are. Around them, you find calm. The noise fades. This is the new foundation of power, controlled presence. You don't need to dominate anyone. You just need to know yourself so deeply that no one else can define you. That's where the real game begins, when you stop letting others script your role in their story. You're not the helper anymore. You're not the savior. You're the strategist. You choose when to give, when to withhold, when to disappear, and when to strike. This isn't about being feared, it's about being undeniable. You don't have to demand respect when your actions command it. You don't have to announce change when your silence carries it. The people who used to overlook you now adjust themselves in your presence. They sit straighter. They measure their words. They sense that you've stepped into something different, a quiet authority that can't be borrowed, only earned. And here's the cruel irony. The same world that once dismissed your kindness will now romanticize your strength. The same people who ignored your voice will now quote your silence. They'll call it mystery, wisdom, discipline, whatever makes them feel smaller in its shadow. But you'll know the truth. You didn't change for them. You changed for survival. Machiavelli once wrote, "It is better to act and repent than not to act and regret." You finally understand what he meant. You've stopped waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect permission, the perfect peace. You've learned that peace doesn't arrive. It's taken, built, defended. You no longer exist to be liked. You exist to be effective. And with that realization, your whole energy shifts. You stop apologizing for the distance, for the silence, for the sharpened tone in your voice. You've earned it. You've been forged by disappointment, betrayal, and the exhaustion of giving too much. This is what comes after the breaking point. Not bitterness, but clarity. Not revenge, but refinement. Now you move through life like a storm, in control of its own direction. You no longer fear destruction, because you've already been destroyed once and rebuilt smarter. That's the kind of power no title or status can buy. That's self-sovereignty, the empire within. You start to realize, power doesn't shout. It hums. Quiet, deliberate, almost invisible. It lives in your posture, in the way your eyes don't flinch when others try to provoke you. You've stopped fighting for validation because you understand the battlefield has changed. The war was never about being right. It was about being respected, and respect isn't earned by kindness. It's extracted through consequence. Every time you say no, someone's comfort fractures. Every time you walk away instead of explaining, someone's illusion collapses. You're not cruel. You're correcting imbalance. The world teaches you that decency will protect you, but that's a lie whispered to keep you obedient. In reality, kindness without calculation turns into self-erasure. You've learned to weaponize calm. Your emotions used to betray you, now they obey you. Anger becomes fuel, pain becomes data. Disappointment becomes proof that you can survive without illusion. You've started moving differently, slower but sharper. Each action has precision. Each word lands like a verdict. People sense the change before they understand it. They start to hesitate around you. Their questions soften. Their tone shifts. You don't need to demand space anymore. Your presence creates it. That's the psychology of quiet dominance. The powerful don't intimidate with volume. They intimidate with focus. You look back at who you were, the constant giver, the forgiver, the explainer, and you almost don't recognize them. You realize that being too good wasn't noble. It was naive. You were trying to earn love from people who only understood control. You were speaking honesty to those fluent in manipulation, and you called it connection. But that version of you died the moment you stopped chasing approval. You buried them quietly. No ceremony. No farewell. Just a silent understanding that innocence is the tax of awakening. From that moment, your empathy evolved into strategy. Your forgiveness evolved into distance. Your trust became an earned privilege, not an open gate. Now you see the patterns everywhere. The fake humility of the powerful. The hidden envy of the polite. The subtle manipulation wrapped in compliments. You don't react anymore, you record. You store information like a chess master watching every move before striking. You know that emotional control isn't about suppression, it's about timing. Every time you delay your reaction, you double your advantage. You've become patient but not passive, detached but not indifferent, cold but alive. That's the paradox of mastery. Your emotions no longer control you, yet they sharpen your intuition. You feel everything, but you choose nothing until the moment demands it. You've entered the phase of quiet evolution. People won't understand it. They'll call it arrogance. They'll call it ego. But you'll smile because you know what they're really feeling. Discomfort. You've stopped feeding their need for validation and now they're starving. They'll project their weakness onto your calm. Because chaos hates boundaries. And yet this calm is what separates you from the masses. The world is addicted to reaction, to outrage, to noise, to the illusion of control through attention. But you're different now. You move like a strategist, not a spectator. You don't chase opportunities. You engineer them. You don't compete. You calculate. Machiavelli once wrote, "Men are driven by two principal impulses, either by love or by fear." You understand this now with precision. The goal isn't to be loved by all. It's to be untouchable by most. You walk the middle line between warmth and warning, and that's what keeps people guessing. It's what keeps you free. You no longer explain your silence. You let it do the talking. When others rush to speak, you study the way their desperation leaks through words. When they try to impress you, you see the cracks in their confidence. When they try to provoke you, you see the fear behind their aggression. You no longer play defense. You are the mirror, and every interaction reveals more about them than it does about you. This is where the game changes. Not through force, but through awareness. You start to see every conversation, every power dynamic as a system. You see who's seeking control and who's surrendering it. You see who needs attention to feel alive and who thrives in solitude. You've mastered the psychology of stillness. Stillness isn't inactivity. It's the art of making others move first. You wait, observe, and act only when advantage is certain. It's not cruelty, it's intelligence. The kind that can't be taught. Only learned through pain, through betrayal, through loss. That's the tuition of the strong. And as you ascend through this mental clarity, something else happens. Your presence becomes mythic. People start whispering about you. They analyze your tone, your timing, your restraint. They can't figure out whether you're dangerous or disciplined, and that confusion is your leverage. You've become what Machiavelli described, a force that commands respect through unpredictability. You've learned the truth most never do. Power doesn't come from being seen. It comes from being felt. The ones who truly control the room rarely need to speak. And from this silence, a new kind of voice begins to rise, one that doesn't ask for permission, one that doesn't explain, one that doesn't seek approval. It just states reality, with a cold precision that can't be ignored. You finally become the one thing this world secretly fears, someone who cannot be controlled through kindness, guilt, or need. Someone who learned to love without attachment, someone who can walk away from anyone at any time without hesitation. That's not cruelty, that's evolution. They say the world rewards good people, but what they never tell you is that the world defines good as obedient. The ones who follow the rules, keep their heads down, apologize for their strength. Those are the ones the system calls good. You used to be one of them. You believed that decency guaranteed respect. You believed that integrity ensured protection, but reality taught you otherwise. You gave loyalty to the ungrateful. You offered patience to the undeserving. You spoke truth to people who only heard convenience, and when they took everything, they told you it was your fault for letting them. That was your awakening, the moment you realized that morality without strategy is a trap. Now you operate differently. You've stripped emotion from obligation. You no longer confuse kindness with weakness. You've learned that mercy, without control, becomes currency for manipulation. Every favor has a cost. Every apology is a signal. Every word is a contract that can be used against you. And so you speak less. You reveal less. You give less. Because every piece of information is a weapon, either yours or theirs. That's the psychology of survival in a world built on perception. People don't respond to truth, they respond to signals. They don't respect honesty, they respect boundaries. And if you've mastered the art of withholding, you've already won half the war. Your silence has become unnerving. They feel it when you enter the room. They sense the lack of desperation, the absence of need. It's what separates the predator from the prey. The weak broadcast their emotions in hope of connection. The strong conceal them until connection serves a purpose. You're not chasing people anymore. You're studying them. You've realized that everyone reveals themselves if you stay quiet long enough. The louder they talk, the clearer their insecurities become. The more they perform, the easier it is to see the cracks. You've turned observation into power. Every reaction you withhold becomes data. Every silence you maintain becomes pressure. They don't know what you're thinking, and that uncertainty controls them. The human mind fears the unknown more than pain. That's why mystery has always been more powerful than explanation. You've become the mystery. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. He wrote, "Men judge more by the eye than by the hand, for all can see but few can feel." Meaning, perception rules reality. You've stopped trying to prove who you are. Instead, you let others build their own image of you, and you control it through subtle cues. A look, a pause, a refusal. You're no longer participating in their narrative, you're directing it. But this control doesn't come easy. It demands sacrifice. You've traded comfort for composure, emotion for clarity. You've stopped reacting to betrayal with anger. Instead, you document it. You watch, you wait. Because the best revenge isn't destruction, it's demonstration. To thrive where they hoped you'd break, to grow in silence while they crumble in noise. That's how power avenges itself without lifting a finger. The world calls it cold. You call it necessary. Because the truth is, the ones who survive aren't the loudest. They're the most disciplined. You've reached the point where no reaction is your deadliest response, where your calm is more frightening than your rage, where your distance speaks louder than confrontation ever could. You've stopped seeking fairness because fairness doesn't exist. The world doesn't pay you for effort, it pays you for leverage. And leverage doesn't come from good intentions, it comes from control. Control of your image, control of your emotions, control of your time. The moment someone else can predict your response, you've already lost, so you've become unpredictable. You appear warm, then vanish. You listen, then disappear before they can read your silence. You give just enough to keep them questioning, never enough to feel secure. That tension is your advantage. It keeps you in their minds long after the conversation ends, and slowly, without realizing it, you've become what you once admired, the one who doesn't chase, doesn't beg, doesn't explain. The one who moves with the quiet rhythm of inevitability. You've stopped seeking influence through effort. Now your very existence is influence. They can't figure you out, and that's the point. because once they do, they can control you. Mystery is armor. Distance is gravity. You've become both. Every interaction now is a move on a board. Every decision, a calculation. Every connection, a potential alliance or threat. You don't love less, you just love differently. With strategy. With awareness. You no longer mistake empathy for obligation. You no longer mistake vulnerability for trust. You give people space to reveal who they are before you decide what they deserve. You've turned detachment into a weapon so subtle that the world doesn't even realize it's bleeding from it. And that's the essence of dark intelligence, not destruction, but design. You're not reacting to the world anymore. You're redesigning your place in it. You've stepped beyond morality and emotion into the domain of mastery, the place where control replaces chaos, and silence becomes the sharpest sound in the room. And once you reach this point, there's no going back. You've seen too much. You've understood too deeply. The innocence that once blinded you is gone. What remains is clarity. Cold, precise, dangerous. You've become what most fear becoming, unshakable. Power doesn't announce itself. It moves like smoke, unseen until it fills the room, silent until you can't breathe without noticing it. That's what you've become. Not a storm, but the silence before it. The kind that makes people nervous without knowing why. The kind that shifts the temperature of a room just by existing in it. Once you wanted to be understood. You begged for it in subtle ways, through over-explaining, through over-giving, through the endless chase for acknowledgement. But now you see the flaw in that desire. The need to be understood is the most dangerous addiction of all. Because every time you explain yourself, you hand someone the blueprint to your mind, and the intelligent ones will always use that map against you. Now you let people misunderstand you. You let them talk, assume, invent. You don't correct the lies. You let them build their own version of you, and you control it through silence. Because confusion creates power. When they can't define you, they can't confine you. This is the final transformation. The moment where emotion hardens into strategy, and morality dissolves into realism. You've realized that power isn't something you seize, it's something you stop giving away. It was never in their hands. It was always in your restraint. You've become calm in a way that feels unnatural to others. They mistake it for emptiness. But it's not emptiness, it's focus. You've detached from the noise of the world because you understand that chaos is a trap. The louder the world gets, the more control it loses. You've stepped outside of that madness. You don't compete for attention anymore. You command it through stillness, that's what frightens them. They can't pull you into their storms anymore because you've learned to be the sea. Vast, quiet, unbothered. You've accepted that not everyone deserves access to your mind, that not every emotion deserves an audience, that not every conflict deserves a response. This is your psychological fortress. The walls are built from discipline, not distance. You're not escaping the world, you're mastering your interaction with it. The cost of being too good was your freedom. The reward for being untouchable is peace. You've learned that forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. Sometimes forgiveness is just emotional deletion, removing the power of memory to drain you. You forgive to stay light, not to stay close, and in that choice you reclaim yourself. They'll call you heartless, but that's because they can't manipulate a heart that beats with purpose. They'll call you ruthless because they can't stand a conscience that obeys logic. They'll call you dangerous because you're no longer under their control. Every insult becomes an unintended confession of their own fear. This is the truth few can accept. To be powerful, you must become misunderstood. To stay free, you must learn indifference. And to master the world, you must first master the self. You've reached a level where you no longer seek revenge. You've evolved beyond it. Because revenge requires obsession, and obsession gives energy to the enemy. You don't burn bridges. You build silence so high that they can't even see where you went. You no longer explain your distance. You no longer justify your boundaries. You simply disappear and let absence speak the language that words never could. Because disappearance, when done with intention, is not escape. It's statement. It says, I no longer need to prove that I could have stayed. And that's the moment power crystallizes. Not when others fear losing you, but when you no longer fear losing them. You've become your own empire now. Built from scars, refined through disappointment, governed by clarity. You're the architect, the strategist, the unseen hand. Every mistake, every betrayal, every sleepless night, it all led here. To the version of you that doesn't beg to be chosen but selects with purpose, this is where the story ends and begins again. Not with noise, not with chaos, but with silence so deliberate it echoes. Because in the end, the most dangerous person is not the one who seeks control. It's the one who no longer needs it.